welcome to this edition of Candid Conversation Zoomed In and Comments video channel. My name is Cliff, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Yates. Dr. Yates is a health professional. He's also a relationship professional, life coach, and of course, a person who has been taking quite the journey and is now actually beginning to put together a book, basically explaining his journey. And I'm very glad to have him on board to talk a little bit about the book and that journey. Dr. Yates, thanks for joining in today here on Zoomed In.
Hey, thanks for having me, Clifford.
Yeah, perfect. So, you are a health professional. You work in health. Tell me, what exactly is the field of expertise you have in that?
I was in a snowboarding accident back in 1996, and as a result, I ended up going to a chiropractor referred to me by my friend that I was living with at the time, and had a good experience, got good results. At the time, I was teaching high school Spanish. And what happened is basically my career as a teacher kind of came to a halt in the sense that I didn't feel like I was progressing. I didn't feel like I had really any support from the administration at the high school where I was teaching. It was a public high school, here in Burbank, or at the time I was in Burbank. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm the type of person that I'm always looking to progress and get better and achieve, higher things. And I just felt pretty stagnant in my career as a high school Spanish teacher. And so I left teaching, and it was a very volatile time in my life because my wife at the time was pregnant with our first child. And so her friend found me a job, and I ended up doing like financial services with Mass Mutual Financial Group for a while. Didn't really like it, and I'm like, I got to get my life together. I need to do something that I can see as a career. And so I started doing some research into chiropractic and what it would take to become a chiropractor. And I'm like, this is doable. I can do this. I mean, I'm late in years. I've already had basically two careers. I could do this. And so I did it. I basically took the prerequisites that were necessary. I actually got a job working for that same chiropractor that I was getting treatment at his clinic in North Hollywood, California. And so that's kind of how I got into it. But I do a specialty that only about 2% of chiropractors do. It's called upper cervical specific chiropractic. And it's very different from general chiropractic in the sense that no matter what you're suffering from, we're only going to adjust your upper neck. And we're not going to adjust it unless we actually take x-rays specific to that area. And there's no twisting, no turning, no cracking. It's like the safest thing that you could possibly do for a person, but extremely effective because we're working in the upper neck where your brainstem is located. And just the anatomy and the physiology of that area allows us to get results that, other chiropractors don't get. So I've been doing that specialty ever since 2003 when I learned about it, when I was introduced to it during my first year of my doctorate in chiropractic. And that's been a crazy journey because when I finished my doctorate in 2007, I started working with my mentor who introduced me to the specialty. But I was married. We wanted to move, out of LA area and not raise our kids in that area. And so we moved around a lot. And I've been in and out of practice basically 3 times. Um, luckily I'm back into practice, but I'm not actually doing the specialty here in Bakersfield. But I work with a clinic that allows me to do a form of the specialty and very happy. I couldn't be happier because I thought I was going to be out of chiropractic, that I wasn't going to return to the profession or anything. And that I could go on and talk about that for a long time because, between 2007 and 2024, was just a crazy journey of being in and out of practice and living in Costa Rica for 2.5 years and then coming back to the States in 2023. And then now here in 2024, 25. I'm in Bakersfield, found a good fit for me, and couldn't be happier.
Well, that's good news that you're able to get back into your main line of work, which is chiropractor. I did also notice on your YouTube channel that you also delved or have delved into skincare, which is rather interesting. Particularly phototherapy. I saw that. So it sounds like you got a main profession, but you've also tried some other things along the way, which would make for a very interesting journey, I bet.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Cliff, because in January of 2024, I was unemployed. I had just been wrongfully terminated from a position as a chiropractor in Seattle, Washington. And I began the year really not knowing what I was going to do. And pretty, worried because that's a very affluent area. It's very expensive to live in the Seattle area and I didn't have any money coming in. And what happened with the phototherapy is that some guy on LinkedIn just kind of reached out to me on my birthday of last year, and he introduced me to this technology, and I was blown away. I didn't know anything about phototherapy because as a chiropractor, I always, I wasn't a big product guy. I never offered any products in my office when I was practicing. I was just a pure, service, pure unadulterated chiropractic, upper cervical specific work, which, like I said, is very different from general chiropractic and how general chiropractors practice. And so when he introduced it to me, it was perfect timing. And as you know in life, Clifford, timing is everything when it comes to relationships, when it comes to opportunities. And I had heard about the technology earlier because as a chiropractor, you're introduced to everything that's out there, all the supplements, all the products, because if you're in the holistic wellness like space, anything that has to do with that, you're going to be introduced to as a chiropractor. And so I had been introduced to it, but the timing was bad. But then in 2024, when he reached out to me, I'm just like, this is amazing. I started using the technology on my body and was blown away by it. And I told him, I said, we've got to take this to the world. I mean, it was brand new technology that it had just been introduced in 2019, right before the pandemic. And so everybody's attention was on the pandemic when this technology was first introduced. And so now that the pandemic is kind of over with, there's a big push to basically share this technology with people. And that's what I've been doing. And as a result of doing that, I reached out to an old colleague that I hadn't talked to for 20 years. And at the time, I was living in a homeless shelter in Bellevue, Washington. And I reached out to this chiropractor that I hadn't talked to for 20 years, and now he's my employer as a result of reaching out to him about this phototherapy technology. He's hired me as an associate, and I couldn't be happier working in his clinic here in Bakersfield.
Well, that sounds like a really great migration and also amalgamation of different different skill sets and different practices that you have basically come in line with, which is interesting. Um, and I'm assuming just from the what you're telling me is that you've had a lot of challenges and you've gone through them and who you are today becoming successful. I read in your profile that you've had to deal with a lot of failure to get where you're at. And you're using this as a mechanism to say to people you can still overcome the failures. Is that what this book is going to be about? Is how to take failure and turn it into success?
That's exactly what it's about, Clifford. Because my journey has been such where no matter what's happened to me, no matter what failure, I've always stayed close to my roots of being raised in a God-fearing family. God has always been a huge part of my life, and just my best friend and my mentor. I believe that God is the best life coach there is, and that the scriptures is the best guide that we have for life. And as a result of that, I haven't ended my life. You know, a couple times I've wanted to end my life because of the failure and just, everything that's happened. And the book is really about that first and foremost. But then I also want to educate people about health and about relationships because, in my opinion, those three things, God, health, having a relationship with God and having a belief in a higher source, and having good health and having good relationships. Without those three things, I couldn't imagine even living in the world that we live in today. I mean, it's so messed up and there's so much misery, as you look at the world and so much injustice and stuff like that. So if I didn't have those three bases in my life, God, health, and relationships, I mean, I couldn't imagine even wanting to live.
Yeah, which is interesting to say. I mean, you got to that point and you overcome it, which is great because we're here chatting. That's good. As there's no expression I've always learned, if you're above ground, you're ahead of the game. So that's
For sure. I agree 100%.
so if you're doing that, you're okay. Now is that what the title is going to be? Is love, God, and relationships and health or health and relate? Do you have a
God,
word
yeah,
for
God, Health, and Relationships is going to be the title of the book. I'm just starting a podcast, as a matter of fact, entitled God, Health, and Relationships. Funny, like 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, I I recorded my first episode. I'm starting out really humble, it's just like an audio type of podcast, no video, where, I just want people to start listening to the podcast, and then maybe I'll turn it into a video podcast, maybe have guests like you're doing right now. But I'm starting out very humble with the podcast. And I recorded the first episode. It was like 21 minutes long. And then after thinking about it, I'm like, no, I deleted it. And now I'm like, I want to do something different, and I want my first episode to be different. So, and it really comes down, Clifford, to my love of being a teacher. Back when I was a young kid, 19 years old, this set the foundation for my life. I served a 2-year mission for my church in Costa Rica. And it was a life-changing experience that gave me a love for teaching that, I went on and taught high school Spanish. As an upper cervical specific chiropractor, I have the opportunity every day in seeing patients to teach them about their bodies, about health, and that's really my first love. And so the podcast and the book are opportunities for me to teach or share whoever wants to listen about these things that are very important in my life: God, health, and relationships.
Yeah, and those three things are critical for people, particularly who are believers in biblical principles. I happen to be a born again believer as well. And it's something that's really important, having God, helping health, and building on good, strong relationships is a really key point.
Yeah.
Um, and you're going to be focusing on teaching people these three things, how to have them all together. Um, and are you going to also include in this book some of your life experiences as well?
That's really what it is. I mean, that was kind of um the inspiration behind starting this book. I was like I told you I back last year between April and about mid-June I was in a homeless shelter in Bellevue, Washington, and when you hit rock bottom like that you really start to even more so because I've always been a meditator. I've always been a deep thinker. I've always kind of looked in retrospect and wanted to set goals and do things. But when you hit rock bottom like that, you're like, wow, what's next? How am I going to get out of this situation? And I, just out of an act of God, really, this person emailed me from a marketing like publishing company. They thought I was somebody else, like another David Yates. They used like an old email that I had, and through that old email, reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you about your book." And I emailed them back. I'm like, "What book? I'm not writing a book." And as a result, I ended up connecting with this woman that worked for this company, and we started talking. And she's like, you know because I told her about my experiences that I've had, and she's like, "You really should write a book." And I said, "Well, when I was in Costa Rica, I wrote some short stories, and this was from 2021 to 2023. When I was there, I was a illegal alien. I mean, I was trying to get residency, and so I was trying to do anything to survive. I was trying to start a practice down there as an upper cervical chiropractor, and as a result of just like me always searching for ways to make money, I came across this company. Um, vocal media or something like that. They don't exist anymore. They ended up being a fraudulent company, but as a result, I ended up writing like 10 different short stories trying to win prizes on this platform, on this website. And as a result of that, I shared those with her at this publishing company. She's like, "Yeah, you should write a book." And I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I should write a book. I should write about my experiences. And then, of course, the title God, Health, and Relationship immediately came to mind as that would be the title of my autobiography because as I started thinking about my experiences, like it all started with God and then becoming a doctor and learning about health. And then I recently, 7 years ago, I got divorced. And as a result of that, I've learned so much about relationships because when something like that happens in your life, you're like, how did this even happen? I mean, this wasn't part of the plan. I was supposed to be married to this person who I had 5 children with forever. That was a plan, and it didn't, and so you start analyzing and you start searching for answers. And as a result of that, I've learned quite a bit about more about relationships in the last 7 years than definitely in the prior almost 50 years of my life prior to that.
So, Dr. Yates, what do you really want to give the audience of your book as far as a message goes? What's the idea here, or the goal to which you want people to run to or achieve?
Well, I understand that a lot of people these days, are searching, they're searching for answers. One of the main purposes of the book is to answer the questions, where did I come from? Why am I here? What is my purpose on this earth? And where do I have the opportunity to go? after this life? And, those are three fundamental questions of human beings that ask their entire lives. And I feel I have the answers. I'm going to answer those questions in my book. I also feel that people struggle with health that it's like, man, why am I unhealthy? Why can't I maintain health? Why does this happen? Why does this happen? I'm going to answer these questions in the book. And then, of course, with relationships, I mean, who doesn't want to have a healthy long-term relationship with somebody that they feel is their partner? Or, I mean, I answer, that's what the book really is. The purpose is to help people find answers to their deepest questions about God, health, and relationships.
Right, and that's a very key point. How far are we along it? Or you, actually, I should say, not we. I'm not writing the book. How far along are you in the process? Where are we at?
So, I'm a very busy individual. I work full time in this multidisciplinary clinic here in Bakersfield. I also have, phototherapy as my side business that I do, my side hustle. I'm raising a 15-year-old daughter. I'm starting the podcast, like I told you. What I like to do is I like to write in my book every Sunday. Really, Sunday is the only day I don't work. I go to church in the morning. I try to, maintain relationships with my loved ones and write in the book. And so I'm about last time I checked, I'm right around 2013, like right around there. That's where I am in the book. And we're in 2025. So I'm getting close to, it probably won't be done until the end of this year at the rate that I'm going. And because I'm really getting to the juicy stuff, it's like up until 2013, I mean, I was still married at that time. Like I said, I've been divorced since then. Lived in Costa Rica, which was those 2.5 years. That's a lot of adventure that I'm going to write about my experiences being an illegal alien in Costa Rica for 2.5 years, the pandemic, everything that happened in that year. So there's a lot of writing that still needs to take place. But I'm right about 2013 as I look at my life as a whole.
That must have been that must have been interesting. As you pointed out, you were in Costa Rica and you weren't legally allowed to be there. What happened there? Did you end up having to, did nobody call you, obviously, or if they did they send you back?
So here the reason I chose Costa Rica Costa Rica wasn't actually my first choice. This all came to fruition at the beginning of 2021 after the worst year in human history, which was 2020, where we all went through the pandemic. And I won't go into detail, but it was the perfect storm for me. Everything that could possibly go bad in my life went bad in 2020. And so as I came out of that year and I was going to end my life. I had it all planned out. December 31st, 2020, I was going to commit suicide. I knew where I was going to do it, how I was going to do it. And God stopped me. And he said, "You know what, David, if you do that, you're just going to make things worse because I love my children and I live for my children, really. That's how it's always been in my life. And he said, if you do that, you're just going to make things worse for your children. And I started thinking about, I'm like, you're right. I shouldn't give up. I'm going to keep going. And so I put together a plan for 2021. And the first part of that plan was, finding a girlfriend. I've been single since 2018, right? And we're going into 2021 and, nothing, right? And so I'm like, okay, I'm living here in California. I'm living with my mom at the age of what I was 52 at the time or something like that. I'm 52-year-old man living with my mom. that needs to change, first of all. And so I put together this plan. I'm like, look, if I don't have a girlfriend by March, I'm gonna move out of this country because I don't like the way our country's going. I want to experience other cultures. And so my first choice was Thailand, and I tried to get a visa to move to Thailand, but I ran into a bunch of problems with the Thai consulate there in LA. They made it, very difficult for me to get a visa to move there. So I'm like, okay, let's go to the Philippines. I have a lot of good friends on Facebook in the Philippines. Let's move to the Philippines. I was looking for a place that would be cheap, where I could like basically survive and that would be welcoming to American citizens. But they were shut down because of the clinic or because of the pandemic. Like they weren't allowing anybody into their country unless you were Filipino national. And so, okay, strike two. I just thought, okay, well, Costa Rica, I've already lived there. It was a great experience. And so things happen. I basically bought my ticket. And the thing about Costa Rica is that you don't need a visa to go there. I mean, you can go there as a tourist. Anybody could buy a ticket right now and go to Costa Rica as a tourist. They're very welcoming to anybody, but especially Americans. I mean, and so when I flew there, I flew there as a tourist. I had a 3 month permission to be there as a tourist for 3 months, but my plan was just to stay there to start, a practice, and to find a wife, basically. That was my plan. But what happened is that I found out really quick that it was going to be hard to get residency there. And I wasn't expecting it to be as difficult to get residency there because remember, I had lived there for 2 years, 30 years prior. In 1988 to 1990, I was there as a missionary for my church. And so I thought, oh, it'll be easy to get residency. It wasn't because of the pandemic. The immigration office was closed. Everything was done online, and their online portal to try to get residency was horrible. So I wasn't getting anywhere there. I knew that the easiest way to get residency would be to get to marry a Costa Rican, but I wasn't finding anybody to marry. And so, the whole time I was doing odd jobs. I started a tax overage business right when I got there, and that was my plan. And, that didn't work out because of the pandemic. Everything was backlogged in these different, government agencies in the United States and everything. So I never got paid for like three of the deals that I did for tax overage sales and stuff like that. And so, I was, and the whole time I was trying to, build organic practice around my chiropractic business, just going to people's homes and stuff like that. But, it's a poor country. And, I realized that, if their insurance doesn't cover chiropractic, most people are not going to be able to afford going to a specialist like myself because although there are like 30 chiropractors in Costa Rica, none of them do a specialty like me. And they're all, just cash, you know, and that's a hard thing to do is build a cash practice. I learned that here in the States, doing my specialty. And so what happened is near the end, I just realized that, hey, this isn't working out. It's not good timing to actually start a practice. I can't, I don't have the capital to do it. The tax overage business was basically my plan to acquire the capital to do it. And then since I wasn't able to get residency, I had to do like these odd jobs, like, just as an independent contractor. And that's how I kind of survived for those 2.5 years. But I miss my kids. It wasn't good timing for starting a practice down there, and talking to other chiropractors that were down there. And so I decided to come back to the States. And now I couldn't be happier. And I have my daughter with me. And so, it was crazy, but you'll hear all about it in the book
For
in
sure,
detail.
I think that'll be interesting, and I really want to say that this has really been an interesting little bit of a foray into this because of what you're saying here is that failure has taught you to be better, and you can actually use that and launch into other things that are successes. If anybody wants to reach out to you to talk more about your book and about your adventures, how would they get in touch with you?
So you can just email me at drdave@godhealthandrelationships.com, which, like I said, I kind of bought that domain in 2024 when I was unemployed, thinking, I'm gonna start a business. I get knocked down, but I keep getting back up, and all this stuff. But yeah, Dr. Dave at godhealthandrelationships.com. That's my email. If somebody wants to call me, I mean, I don't mind. I can give out my number as well. 425-802-0918. I'm a very transparent, open person. I don't have any fears. I just want to help people be happy and educate people about things that they have questions about. So Dr. Dave at godhealthandrelationships.com or 425-802-0918.
Perfect. I appreciate you sharing a little bit of your story with us today. I'm going to get this up on our channel. Candid Conversation Zoomed In and Comments video is the name of the channel. Zoomed In is the show. Dr. Yates, thank you so very much for taking time out today to share your story.
Thank you, Clifford, for having me.
Perfect. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care and have a great day, guys.